There is a brand new sports biopic that is showing in Malaysian cinemas. Malaysian sports biopic. I say showing in Malaysian cinemas. I think it's down to one or two screenings only because it didn't necessarily perform as well in the box office. It's called Padu, and it tells the story of the Malaysian women's basketball team that were tremendously successful in the SEA Games. And apparently, I did not know this fact before watching this movie. The Malaysian women's basketball team has won the most gold medals in the SEA Games of all of the other Southeast Asian countries. So that is a pretty tremendous feat and a fantastic story in itself. It is, however, truly unfortunate that it was portrayed in this movie.
Completely wasted.
Completely wasted. In fact, the best part of this film, and I think the most emotionally moving part of this film, was a post-credit sequence in which the three actors portraying the three basketballers play basketball with the three actual basketballers. They're on a court. It is this beautiful, casual, fun sequence where they're getting to know each other on the court, and it plays over the credits. And I kept thinking, God, I wish the movie made me feel like that.
That sequence, which is done completely with no dialogue, had no real post-production editing, no sequencing, no scripting, had more heart than the rest of the film.
The 95 minutes.
That 30-second sequence of 6 women playing basketball, just goofing around, had more heart than an entire fucking film.
We could review this movie in the way we usually review movies, but then I figured I could just cut and paste criticisms that we've had of other Malaysian movies and it would be the same.
Oh,
bad writing, mediocre acting, terrible directing, just a movie driven by message and message alone. Every sequence felt the need to have a moral behind it.
This movie, actually, to be fair, a lot of Malaysian films is perfect for bad film bingo.
Yes.
We should do an Instagram post of bad Malaysian film bingo because this movie has them all.
Racism, check.
Addressing said racism in the poorest of ways, check.
Cliched racial characters, check. Non sequitur editing, check.
Messy timeline, also check. Terrible acting, check. Terrible wig, also check. Decent lighting, check. Camera in focus, check.
Occasionally.
Mostly. It's not a good film.
It's not.
It's not a good movie.
I will say this. In rating this film, I have to say, I think the basketball sequences were all right.
Sure.
I'm grasping, but...
For me, my problem with that is, had this movie come out after maybe Do the Right Thing in the early 90s, I'd be okay. But in 2024, after you've seen something like the basketball sequences in the HBO series about the LA Lakers, or the basketball sequences in the Apple TV Plus series on a young and up-and-coming basketball player, I think in this day and age, when in recent memory, not even recent memory, but as of the last 18 months, 2 fantastic shows about basketball and about how basketball should be shot has been released, you can no longer release something as mediocre as this.
I mean, the rest of the movie is
dog shit.
The rest of the movie just falls back into terrible film tropes with regards to how they want to develop character, and how you develop character is by creating conflict that doesn't necessarily make any sense. Like in sports movies, the general idea is that you create conflict from the outside so that the team can then come together against an external threat. In this movie, it feels like they've created 2 characters who may not necessarily be real basketball players, but there are the 2 Chinese characters who think they're better than the rest of the team, and so therefore they go out of their way to practically sabotage the team.
And mind you, this isn't some high school basketball club. This is the national basketball team. If you've got 2 players sabotaging your squad, why are they still fucking there?
It makes no sense.
If anything, I think this film is a damning indictment of the Basketball Association and how they treat and or protect their players.
I don't think that was the point they were going for, but
I'm
that's what it
sure
felt
that
like.
wasn't the point they were going for. But like at one point, a new player joins the squad. She's Indian, of course. So what happens? The coach tells a different player, or rather tells the captain of the team, to find her a room. Hang on. That's the team manager's job. That's the job of the administrators at this basketball hostel that they're all living in. It's not a different player's role. And of course, she then gets put in with these two bullies, and the bullies make her do their laundry
And clean the toilets.
and clean the. I was just like, what the fuck is this? This is the. I was like, I don't, man. See, just thinking about it's getting me all riled up.
It's such bad writing though, because one of these characters we are supposed to believe is mean because she comes from a broken home, and somehow that is supposed to justify her actions. And so in the end, after a brief montage sequence, not necessarily a redemption arc, but a brief montage sequence, we're supposed to forgive her and feel sorry for her and just move on. It's just bad character development. She hasn't necessarily atoned for anything that's happened, and so why am I supposed to like her? Another one of the characters, who is equally as mean, shall we say, develops a conscience halfway through the movie, and yet there is no justification for her behavior before or after. And so all of these characterizations just feel half-assed.
It's not even half-assed. These characters are drawn from tropes that are no longer believable.
It's like someone saw a sports movie from the 1970s and 80s and decided to kind of emulate the worst practices from those movies.
Yes, exactly. Like the bully who's actually a heart of gold, but she's just troubled. And again, like I said, like even in the world of your story, if this was a pay-to-play kind of private club, I get it. I get why the administrators would want her around. But other than one sequence early on, which doesn't prove much, we don't even know if they're very good players. It's like, why are we even here right now? And I think that's the problem. Like, I feel like the writers of this film didn't consider how an actual sporting organization should work.
But also, the writers of the movie didn't consider how a sports movie should work. And that for me was the biggest problem, because I go back to The Greatest Showman. For me, that is a great example of touting something and then making it great. Like if you say, I have found the world's greatest songbird, when she comes on screen, when Rebecca Ferguson comes on screen and sings for the first time, she better be fucking great. You need to be moved in your seat. You need to start weeping in the cinema because you've never heard a voice that beautiful or a song that great. And The Greatest Showman pulls it off. When she sings for the first time, you share that look that Hugh Jackman has when he's looking at her. And in this one, we're supposed to believe that this Malaysian team is absolutely fantastic, but so little is done to show you why they're great. Because we're not coming into the story at the point at which they are striving for greatness. They've already won a whole bunch of gold medals. Now they're trying to recapture that after a massive loss. And so you need to show me that they're great beyond your lead character's motivation to get up off the mat after an injury and continue playing. Like, it has to be more than that.
Yeah.
Only then can I relate to the characters. Only then do I feel when they are down and out in the third act and the clock is ticking and I want them to score that final basket, right? And then we go to the whole climax where it should be this massive third act event. And as the game is going on, I remember when it ended, I turned to you and went, wait, that was the final? Like they won already? They won the gold? That was it? Because nothing in that sequence had any of the indications that actually told us this was a final climax. Like if you've seen a sports movie, you know what it is. It's a certain music, it's a certain pacing, it's the way the sequence is edited and cut. Like there's all of this stuff that goes into building up something that's going to be great. And this one felt a bit like Comanche Boys at the end, where it just fizzled out and they got their gold.
I mean, to be fair, for both of these movies, to say fizzling out is quite a high bar because this movie never really catches any flame, right? Like, it sort of just ends. There's all these attempts at emotional weight, when you watch them training and they're like, oh, they're laughing and they're having good time because they're training really hard. And then, oh, look, let's all run past the KTM station and then run to Tugu Negara for no reasons, then just to have these shots of
KL.
not only just shots of KL, but they're supposed to evoke Malaysiana. They're supposed to evoke a sense of national pride, which is never really achieved because those sequences were taken out of order.
And the reason we're so upset about this is because there are great stories here to be told. Like the Indian player, Kale, and her story, and her father's story, and where she comes from. They make a big deal about the fact that she comes from Segamat. But none of that is portrayed in a way that makes you feel it. And I think that's the problem.
For me, the biggest problem is that this is a story of an actual successful Malaysian team that's done this really wonderful, fantastic thing
that no one knows about it, Bahir, because every time I bring it up, people go, oh, really? We're that good?
Yeah, it was the same with Gabanche Boys because we had people commenting on our bad review of the movie saying, oh, but the story is true and how can you say that about these things? I'm like, look, I'm not judging the event. I'm judging the film about said event. I think the event was fantastic and we should remember that event. And I think documentaries should be made about these people. However, when you give that story to a bad filmmaker and a bad storyteller who then make the unsurprising decision to make a bad movie and a bad story, I will judge said movie and story, right? I think that's the difference. We want to celebrate these women. We want to celebrate the teams that have done us as a nation proud, even though we don't know about it, which is probably the biggest crime of all, second to this film. Don't go watch this movie. I mean, you can't probably. I don't think it's still showing.
I don't think you'll get a chance. I'm not sure how long it's going to be in cinemas. I think there are 1 or 2 screenings left. That's about it.
However, I want to say loudly and proudly, when this shows up on Netflix, I'm not saying if, I'm saying when this shows up on Netflix, please don't watch it, right? Because look, Madam Web has just shown up on Netflix and it's the number 1 film in Malaysia because everybody wants to watch this car crash of a thing. Don't give Padu the PR bump that they can then say this movie is the number 1 film in Malaysia. Don't give it that chance. It's not fair. This is a terrible film.
And it will show up on Netflix. God knows they'll buy anything.
They'll buy anything, and they'll buy anything at any price.
If you happen to have seen Padu, for some reason, by some quirk of fate, let us know what you think. Reach out on all of our social media feeds, Goggler MY. You can also email us on podcast@goggler.my or send us a WhatsApp on the Goggler hotline, 012-524-5208. Thank you so much for listening. This is the Goggler Podcast.